25 years ago, back when he might have been the most interviewed man in New England stock car racing, Bugsy Stevens was fond of telling reporters that the real stars of the sport were not the drivers, but the mechanics. The best jockey in the world can't win, Stevens used to say, if he's not riding a good horse. I still think Bugsy was being modest when he said that. Drivers like him and Billy Greco and Ollie Silva, in other words, like all the Hall of Famers here today, not to mention guys like Eddie Flemke and Richie Evans and Fats Caruso and the rest who are no longer with us, were more than just jockeys. They were athletes and they were daredevils and they were the heroes of our Saturday nights. But Bugsy's point is well taken. Every now and then along comes a guy with a special talent for grooming the kind of good horse that every race-driving jockey loves to ride. Today we induct into this Hall of Fame such a man. We induct a man who held in his hand some very simple tools, hacksaws, wrenches, screwdrivers, but did things with those tools which were not so simple. Fred Rosner was a racing mechanic. He was a racing mechanic in the days when being a racing mechanic carried more responsibility than that same job carries today. These days, a lot of the people who call themselves mechanics are more like parts handlers. They unbolt a used part and replace it with a new one. For most of Freddie Rosner's career, being a racing mechanic meant being a fabricator and a welder and a backyard engineer. If something didn't fit, you made it fit. Today's racing mechanics know all about mail-order catalogs and speed shops because that's where the parts are. Well, if you wanted to be a racing mechanic in 1949, when Freddie got started at the tender age of 14, you had to know about junkyards because that's where the parts were. It was an era which demanded innovation and produced some amazing tales. In December of 1969, this man Rosner, like every racer in every off-season since the beginning of time, was looking for sponsorship for the following year. He put together a resume of his accomplishments to that point, and when you read it today, every page invites you to step back into a colorful period in stock car racing history. For instance, the resume tells us that in 1959, Rosner went to Daytona with a 37 Ford sedan whose engine was set back 30 inches from its stock location. Think about that. 30 inches is 2.5 feet. Its driver was another Hall of Famer, Gene Bergen. There's a notation under each particular car listed on Freddie's resume explaining how that particular car performed. Under the Daytona entry, it says, quote, due to unusual engine placement, driver had no visibility on high bank turns, unquote. No wonder. Poor Bergen was sitting in the back seat. The point is, in those days, you never knew how something was going to work until you tried it. Happily, further examination of Rosner's incredible resume proves that most of what he tried worked out pretty well. Wherever this man took his wrenches, good things usually happened. The resume continues. 1951-52, a flathead Ford coupe. Owner, Bill Gurney. Driver, Bernard G. Track championship, Millers Falls, Massachusetts. 1953-54, flathead Ford coupe. Owner, Ray Brown. Driver, Ray Brown. Track championship, Millers Falls. 1957, 34 Ford coupe with a Mercury engine. Owner, Mike McGuire. Driver, Ray Brown. Track championship, Riverside Park. And then it gets busy. 1961, a 36 Chevy coupe. Owner, Rennie Charland. Driver, Rennie Charland. Sportsman Championship, Norwood, Massachusetts. Sportsman Championship, Old Bridge, New Jersey. Sportsman Championship, Menands, New York. Sportsman Championship, Utica, Rome, New York. This, of course, was in the days when the sportsman cars and the more powerful modifieds raced together. That season, Charland and Rosner had the highest finishing sportsman car 32 times. 1962, a 36 Chevy coupe. Owner, Rennie Charland. Driver, Rennie Charland. First sportsman 21 times in 78 races. NASCAR National Sportsman Championship. Fast cars just had a way of following Freddie Rosner around, and they followed him everywhere. On his resume, Rosner kept track of the speedways where each car raced. In the beginning, that was simple. Riverside Park, Millers Falls, Stafford Springs, the Keene Fairgrounds. But in 1962, when he and Charland were chasing those NASCAR points and racing 5 nights a week, Freddie took the easy way out. Next to the word tracks on his resume, he simply filled in these words, Canada to Florida. He did the same thing in 1964 when he and Rennie took another NASCAR championship, one of 4 straight titles won by Charland. It was also in 64 that Rosner picked up a national award called the Master of Mechanics. In his case, this was obviously something of an understatement. His old resume only takes us through 1969, but Freddie Rosner's career didn't stop there. In the early 70s, he turned his attention from modified coupes to late model cars, building a Fairlane for the old NASCAR North Circuit. It was fast enough to be nicknamed the Frantic Ford, and it won enough to help its talented young driver, John Rosati, become a New England racing star. And one more time, Rosner could say he raced from Canada to Florida because he and Rosati competed everywhere from Quebec to Daytona Beach. This month, every crewman at every short track in the country dreams of packing up and heading to Daytona. It was like that in Freddie Rosner's day too, but for different reasons. Today, these dreamers see a trip to Daytona leading to a job on a Winston Cup team, a job complete with good pay, medical benefits, and even a retirement plan. For guys like Rosner, Daytona beckoned for different reasons. In the days when nobody in stock car racing had a retirement plan, the best mechanics were lured by the challenge offered by the fastest track of them all. Rosner answered that challenge several times, attacking Daytona with Rosati, Bergen, Charland, Denny Zimmerman, and Red Foot. In fact, Daytona was a magnet for tinkerers like Rosner even before the big speedway was built. In 1956, at just 21 years of age, he worked on a car that ran on Daytona's old beach and road course. It was a 39 Ford Coupe with a Mercury engine stuffed under the hood. In other words, it was just the sort of mix and match concoction that only a real racing mechanic could love. It has become a cliche to say that the men who work in the pits are the unsung heroes of this sport. And that is true to some extent. Freddie Rosner's exploits did go largely unsung in the media and in the grandstands. But since 1950, his praises have been sung loudly by fellow mechanics who watched his every move with envy, and by 100 drivers who have tried in vain to catch the cars Freddie Rosner built. And if the plaques we hand out each year at this ceremony could speak, they too would sing Rosner's praises, because at least 10 men in this Hall of Fame have taken turns sitting in cars wrenched by the man we honor today. Now it is time to hang his plaque beside theirs. The mechanics, Bugsy Stevens always said, are the stars of the game. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome one of those stars, the first mechanic to be inducted into the Near Hall of Fame, Mr. Fred Rosner.
This is quite an honor to be the first mechanic to be inducted into this organization, along with the drivers that are already in this, that have won Daytona, Talladega, Winston short track championships, modified championships. It's just a super honor to be along with those guys, something I never thought that would ever enter my mind that it would happen, you know, that I did this for the enjoyment, the love of the racing. There's a few people that along the way that probably I should thank more than others. Most everybody that's helped me in the career. But Charlie Blair, the first guy that ever went to the races with at Stafford Springs on a little quarter-mile asphalt that was in the infield that probably a lot of you don't remember. John Rosati Sr. was a big influence in the thing. Bob Johnson, Randy LaJoy. Those are the guys that have helped me get along this thing. It's been a big learning experience with working with a lot of drivers. You know, it doesn't sound like that I had a job very long because so many drove different cars, but Nira and the group that inducted everybody in this. Thank you all.